Analyses.
Hello everyone and welcome to Gilli Pong Analysis. Now we are going down the rabbit hole of alchemy. I contacted the brother-in-law of my girlfriend, who is an archaeologist and has actually been researching alchemy and when alchemy became medicine. And he recommended a few things to take a look at. Because Isaac Newton was an alchemist, and he was trying to figure out the philosopher's stone. We figured out that the philosopher's stone is actually the semen, and if you are going to Christify yourself, you have to perform a certain kind of sex magic. Just to summarize, if you want to understand it, go back to my former lecture, presentation I made, and you will catch up on the alchemy part. But I'm trying to categorize everything like Gilli Pong analyzes atheism, Gilli Pong analyzes gravity, Gilli Pong analyzes stuff. Let's just see. And alchemy is going to be one of those categories, so you could probably find it on my channel. But in this one, we're going to take a look at a guy who, and it's from aaroncheek.com, who seems to be very, very good. He is a PhD. I think he's an historian. I'm not very familiar with him personally. I don't know who this guy is, but this is a link my friend sent me. So Schwaller de Lubicz, Schwaller, or used to be called René. One of the books that he made is Adam the Red Man, or the Elements of a Gnosis for the Perfect Marriage. We're going to go a little bit down history around the 1900s, the eve of 1900, and we're going to follow his kind of story of his life, because he's kind of doing what Newton was doing. And we're going to understand alchemy from a much better, deeper, the knowledge that was held in alchemy has gone into science, and science has become this, I don't want to use that word, but it's kind of like bullshit today. Quantum theory, quantum particles, all this bullshit that you're hearing from the physicists today, and they're all running after each other's asses, proving a theory after a theory, and saying a theory is provable by another theory, but they have lost grasp of reality. The alchemists, they were studying nature, they were figuring out what the heck is going on, and they became demonic. Just so you know. So we start studying the dark arts to be able to understand our enemies. We are faithful, good, and kind-hearted people, but in order to know what we're up against, we have to understand what we're up against, basically. And in this one, we're going to try to go through that. The Call of Fire, the Hermetic Quest of René Schwaller de Lubicz, by Aaron Cheek. René Aor Schwaller de Lubicz, 1887 to 1961, was an Alsatian artist, alchemist, Egyptologist, Neopythagorean, and philosopher. You might ask, what is an Alsatian? Okay, I looked that up for us here. Somebody who is Alsatian is basically from a region in Germany and France that were persecuted by the Nazis. They were put in concentration camp. Their capital is Strasbourg. They spoke a certain dialect. After the Second World War, the French took them in and they tried to eradicate their language. There's a lot of people that come from there. It's very connected to Switzerland too. So just to give you a heads up of what that is, you can figure that out on your own. But his life's work encompassed a surprisingly diverse spectrum of activity, from the creation of alchemically stained glass to the archaeology and architectonics and symbolic analysis of Egyptian temples. We just have to go with one thing here. Neopythagorean. Neopythagorean. What does that mean? So Pythagoras was an alchemist, and he was a philosopher and a polymath, scientist, the old natural philosopher. He was also a political influence. This guy was the one who was trying to prove that we live on a globe back in the day. He was, if you're a Pythagorean, you believe in the metempsychosis, which is the transmigration of souls. If you die, the soul goes to God, meaning that the soul is immortal, and it enters into a new body, kind of like a reincarnation. He was a very smart dude. He had the Pythagorean theorem, which we learn in school. He can tune your instruments to a Pythagorean scale, something like this. So 432 hertz instead of 440 hertz, which everything is tuned into now if you listen to the radio. He was investigating these solids, the 5 regular solids, which are the polyhedron in a 3-dimensional Euclidean space, polygons, the polygons that you're using when you're creating some 3D images in Maya or animation or whatever. He has the theory of proportion and this sphericity of the Earth. Spherical Earth or Earth's curvature. So this guy was trying to figure that out. He also identified Venus as the morning and evening stars. He was the lover of wisdom. He was also a follower of Hermes Trismegistus from Egypt, which was believed to be, what's his name? The Egyptian god that gave everyone language, Thoth. So, just to give you an understanding of who Schwaller really was. Never mind. Yeah, and here is this book. It was an auction, and it's considered like for bibliophiles. It's a very, very rare book. You will understand why later when we go through this text here. So, taken in its entirety, however, the esotericism of de Lubicz is nothing less than a science of consciousness. Remember, Newton, the perception of all phenomenal things, from mineral to man, as arrested phases of a living cosmic alchemical reaction was, for Schwaller, the cornerstone of his panentheistic Weltanschauung, which means world view. And when you are meeting an atheist and a theist and they're debating, you have 2 world views debating. Weltanschauung. Herein, everything that exists, the phenomenal world as a whole, was seen precisely as a reaction to a metaphysical action. Life, for Schwaller, was a faculty of reacting, and this included the mineral and metallic kingdoms. The universe is nothing but consciousness, he remarks, and though its appearances presents nothing but an evolution of consciousness from its origin to its end, the end being a return to its cause. So with cause comes effect, and we are living in the effects of it. The cause is therefore God. But the double nature, this is the main thing that is so hard to understand, especially when you're fluoridated out of your senses and you're trying to figure out what's going on. So, double nature, the duality of being. René Adolphe Schwaller was born on 30th December 1887 in Strasbourg, the ignoble region of France that straddles the border of Rhineland, Germany. Hence, I can't quite remember the name of the region, but Alsatians come from there. Schwaller would acquire two more names in the course of his life. The chivalric title de Lubicz and the initiatic appellation Aor. Initiatic appellation Aor. The story of these names will reveal much, and we'll go into that later. For now, however, it is important to realize that he was first and foremost Alsatian. Yeah, not Alsatian, Alsatian. His nature is precise reflection of the land, or rather borderland, into which he was born. Alsace. I don't know how you pronounce it, but Alsace. The longitude strip of land defined by the Vosges in the west and by the Rhine in the east. Since Julius Caesar first wrested the region from the Germanic tribes in the 1st century CE, its history has been one of the repeated oscillations between Gaelic and Germanic rule. So it's an ancient country where the Germanic tribes were fighting the Romans. You can envision the beginning scene in Gladiator. In early modern times, Louis XIV annexed Alsace to the French crown, 1648, while the French Revolution in 1789 divided it into the Haute and Basse region. At the end of Franco-Prussian War, 1871-72, France gave up most of the region to Germany, and it was here, in Reichsland Elsass-Lothringen, Imperial German Alsace-Lorraine, that Schwaller was born. In spite of its Germanic character, the region remains defiantly French, as did René Schwaller. Indeed, his part French, part German name reflects the bifold lineage of not only the territory but its people. His father, Joseph Schwaller, a pharmacist, was of Swiss-German origin, while his mother, Marie Bernard, originally from Asnières, was French. And yet, while the bilingual milieu into which Schwaller was born would give him fluency in two languages, he spoke and wrote in his mother's tongue, as Christopher Bamford remarks in his introduction to the English translation of Schwaller's first book, A Study of Numbers. All his life he wrestled with this inheritance, continuing, as it were, to think in German but write in French. From a stylistic point of view, remarks Emanuel Dufour-Kowalski, commenting in a similar vein, one must not reflect to mention the formal approach of the author, allergic to all Romanesque and poetic expressions, never hesitating to supplement his philosophical vocabulary with a technical neologisms. Ultimately, like the wine of the region, the close yet uneasy confluence of the Romance and Germanic simultaneously pervaded his nature. The dual inheritance of the Strasbourgeois borderland is further mirrored in the double affinity for art and science that would play an integral role in the alchemist's upbringing. According to his wife's 1963 biography, the young René divided the leisures of his youth between reveries in the forest, painting, and chemical experiments in laboratory of his father. These pastimes would prove critical to his mature work, and alchemy engaged both as a sacred science and a royal art. At the root of both endeavors lies a metaphysics of perception that embraces both the intuitive and empirical faculties. This desire to comprehend the transcendent levels of reality through concrete phenomena remains a hallmark of Schwaller's earliest experiences. Deeply Pythagorean, Schwaller saw the human lifespan governed by a series of 7-year cycles that correspond to phases of organic and initiatic development. He identified key moments in his early years as formative experiences that crystallized his abiding quest into the nature of origin. His first experience occurred at the age of 7. Holding a simple coin in his hand, he was struck by a concrete experience of the connection between unity and duality. The two sides of the coin sparked the metaphysical perception of numbers as form, and with this came the insight into the nature of God that colored his entire life and work. The opening of his second cycle at the age of 7 was thus stamped with the realization of the simultaneously dual yet non-dual nature of divinity revealed in a simple everyday object. Following from this, at the same age, he formulated the question that would guide his entire philosophical quest into the mystery of existence. Quel est l'original le matière? What is the origin of matter? At the age of 14, the experience inaugurating his third cycle, the entry into intellectual development concerned light and fire. This experience centered an experiment conducted in the laboratory of his father involving the production of hydrochloric acid. A common but impressive experiment proceeding from the fact that the two components of the acid, hydrogen gas and chlorine, are so photosensitive that diffuse light will produce a reaction and direct sunlight an explosion, for reasons that will become clearer in due course. The following description of the process, reproduced from Fulcanelli's Les Demeures Philosophales, The Philosophical Mansions, 1931, must be taken as a representative of Schwaller's own formative experience. Light, rarefied and spiritualized fire, possesses the same virtues and the same chemical power as crude elementary fire. An experiment aimed at the synthetic realization of hydrochloric acid, HCl, from its component is enough to demonstrate this. If one encloses equal volumes of chlorine and hydrogen gas in a glass flask, the two gases will retain their own individuality as long as the flask that contains them is kept in darkness. Already, with diffused light, little by little, their combination begins to occur. But if one exposes the vessel to direct solar rays, it shatters under the pressure of the violent explosion. This chemical experiment crystallizes the creative and catalytic role of light and fire in alchemy. Andre van den Broek, to whom Schwaller would confide a wealth of information in the years before his death, comments, "This experiment made an enormous impression on the young man, and his interest in color phenomena dated from that day. It had become evident to him that for the objects of perception, light ceases to exist as such as it diffuses into the color phenomenon. Hence, Newton. Solar light going into a prism creating color. The color does not shift more after you have put it through another prism. Meaning, the inversion of the rainbow means the red is on the top and violet is on the bottom. But if you, like, when you look at it out, it's like it's a reflecting thing in some kind of a dome when you look at a rainbow. But if you look at it from a prism and you put it through a mirror, then it changes into the right way of how light is really condensed with these 7 colors. A part of knowledge concerning light would have to be gathered through color. Color had to become a form of perception. He understood he instantly felt that the state of consciousness which accompanied this intellectual opening was connected to another decisive moment in his life, the moment of his metaphysical discovery of number through the two-sided coin. Number was present again, the unity of light fracturing into the ordered multiplicity of the spectrum. The revelation of one becoming two had been fleshed out by the analysis of the space between one and two, and that space was the scale of color. Here, in their perception, are the formative keys Schwaller will use to understand the origin of matter, number, and light. Through the coin, Schwaller understood the unity underlying apparent duality. Number would lead him to understand phi as the harmonic function of scissions by which one divides itself into two. Thus, this would become a core principle of his mature cosmology. The golden proportions as an activity of unity that simultaneously engenders the mystery of duality, creation and fall, through fire. Schwaller came to see metaphysical light as a non-polarized energy, a term he would use interchangeably with the absolute, God, the primordial one. For Schwaller, the origin of matter was generated through the polarization of this primordial energy into an active and passive aspect, sulfur and mercury, acid and alkaline, conceived together as the agent and patient of one creative interreaction, of which the material cosmos, visible and tangible, was the neutralization, cinnabar, salt. Through this process, the phenomenal world of color appeared, bringing into the characteristic sevenfold signature of light, the rainbow. With this, the septenaries of the natural cosmos from the color spectrum through to the intervals of musical harmony would reveal the laws of manifestation underpinning all things, from the structure of the atom to the organization of the solar system. So he is a firm believer in the solar system, the heliocentric system, and is therefore trying to figure out this. He is also a believer in the nuclear atom. So we have an understanding here that we have to see it from his perspective, from his time. Like, what is he trying to figure out? What is he looking at? The same thing as Newton was looking at. The prism of light, the alchemy of salt and sulfur and mercury, the tria prima, the Holy Spirit, the Son and the Father, the Trinity. In 1904, at the age of 17, René Schwaller left his hometown of Strasbourg to await military service in the German Empire. Fleeing on foot by night, he crossed the French border via the Vosges to arrive in Paris, where he was received by his maternal aunt. In Paris, Schwaller would be exposed to a number of formative influences. The color theories of Henri Matisse, of whom he would become a student, key figures in the Parisian alchemical revival, notably Fulcanelli, with whom he would collaborate, and the esoteric milieu of the Parisian Theosophical Society, of which he would become a member. He would also inaugurate his first esoteric group, Les Veilleurs, the Watchers. Matisse, Theosophy, and the Parisian alchemical revival. Let's stop here. It's been approximately 24 minutes, and we'll split this video into two. This is very interesting. This is going to go down a very interesting route, and you're going to be mind blown by this information, and you will see that the scientists, they were alchemists, and they were trying to figure God out in once upon a time. Now scientists are figuring out the theory of the atheist perspective of nothing matters, everything is molecules, and it doesn't really, everything is like the nuclear atom is empty mostly. It's like these are all theories about something that you cannot really prove. And if you try to look at the information about these studies, you see that they were just, I don't know why we believe this stuff. Einstein, what the heck is this theory about the universe? There's no reality here. But these guys, they were actually looking at the reality, and they became corrupted, it seems. There's something that happened during this time that has created this timeline of ignorance in science. But anyway, I want you to have, and I wish you to have, the most beautiful present moment. It's time to shine. So let's glow!
Gilli Pong!
Analyses.